Still can't believe we're not getting paid for this.
We're not getting paid for this?
What?
I'm out.
What? Okay. And we're live.
Filmmakers and photographers drinking coffee and talking shit.
Welcome to Filmmakers and Photographers Drinking Coffee and Talking Shit.
Excuse me. I'd like to butt in for a second and just thank my good friend Matt for buying me an amazing mocha.
Yeah.
Thank
Mocha, cheers. Cheers.
Clinky.
Cheers.
Okay. Go ahead.
In this podcast, you'll hear insights and stories from four guys and maybe an occasional guest who have all come to the craft of visual media from very different starting points. In this episode, we're going to talk about listening more and talking less. We'll drink a little coffee and talk a little shit. Chris, let's talk about listening.
Yeah. What did you say?
Wait, what?
Yeah. No. I think this is a good topic. You know, we've ranged in topics just in the three programs we've done. This one's a little bit more, I think, of like productivity. I would say. I think one of the more important things we do as storytellers, filmmakers, when we're especially telling stories from our client's perspective, is listening. We got to know what they want, where they're headed, what their vision is, and the only way that's going to be accomplished is by being a good listener. So, you know, what is a good listener? A good listener is someone that's, you know, taking in all the information they possibly can, not trying to interject themselves early in the conversation, and really kind of formulating the important information. So when you do open your mouth and you do talk, you have something substantive to add to the conversation, and I think it's just it's the starting point for a successful program development for your client. So what do you guys say? What do you think?
I would think Sam Elliott and Clint Eastwood do that quite well.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Oh, just because everything they say.
We need to get
They
those
mean
guys
it.
on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when are you going to have that taken care of, Matt?
Second quarter. End of second quarter.
Yeah, I mean, it brings to mind to me, Chris, an old adage, which is, when you're speaking, you're spouting what you already know.
Yes.
Right? So
Good point.
By listening is how you're able to learn new information, right? And to
Right.
your point, just to echo your sentiment, that's exactly what you should be doing when you're telling other people's stories. is-
Yeah.
And it also comes down to respect. Respecting that other person that you're trying to have a conversation with and learn something from.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and there's a challenge to this, right? So in my role as producer, one of the things that I've found to be very difficult is, imagine you're at a trade show, right? Big trade show, thousands of people, and these people are already having conversations. They're already dialoguing with each other, and now you have to break into that conversation out of thin air. They don't know who you are. You have a camera guy behind you, and you're asking them to do something. That's very hard, and I think it's because it's very unnatural to break into someone's conversation uninvited and ask them to do something. People are expecting to listen and to be heard, and at a trade show, everyone's got something they want to say.
You bet. That's a
or
totally different
learn.
take. Isn't it?
I mean, yeah, and so it's like, from the opposite end, having to interrupt somebody and then go into a spiel, it's like almost the opposite feeling of that, of being listened to. It's like, why did you just come start talking to me? So
Well, there's this certain etiquette. I think what you're talking about there. But I think we've all been involved in meetings, and it's you don't know these people, you're getting to know them, you're nervous oftentimes, and there's a tendency to run of the mouth syndrome.
Yeah.
And, there's got to be, because there can't be any silence, because it's uncomfortable.
Oh.
So it's this spewing of kind of inane conversation when you really should be getting to the point as quickly as possible of saying, so tell me, what are you wanting to do? And, why are you wanting to do this?
Yeah.
Kick back, go into listen mode, take notes, and then now you're putting yourself way ahead of the game. You'll actually have intelligent questions because you've listened to the people and what they're wanting to do. So
There's a confidence in saying less.
There is.
I feel like the less confidence someone has often in those environments, the more they speak.
That's right.
There's also the aspect too when you're in with a fresh client that you want to make an impact.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so there's that kind of weighing on you that it's like they're not hiring you to just sit there and smile and nod. But I think you have to break past that and really do listen. The other thing too that I've found and the art of active listening and all that stuff is I think really important. One of the things that I've found with myself is that we often hear what we want to hear. We have confirmation bias, especially as we go into creative projects. We think it needs to be a certain way, and so we pick up on the things that support that, but we might very well ignore the little details that don't necessarily support, kind of our preconceived notions. So that's the other thing too, in addition to like active listening, it's shutting down your brain and really just active, hearing everything that's said and trying to not cloud it with any prejudice.
Yeah, and I also think, there are going to be a lot of creatives out there where they hear this advice of listen more and talk less, right? And they say, man, my first meeting, I'm really going to do that. Then you build a rapport with the client and you throw that out the window. Well, how impressive would it be to third meeting, fourth project with the same client to still offer that same level of attentiveness in that discussion and really listen? Because you can't assume, because that's the thing, right? You're going to get comfortable with people. You're going to feel like you kind of know what they want or, how they operate. But that changes, and I think it's like that in a marriage, right? It's like, you learn a lot about your partner before you marry them, but that learning should never really stop, right? You should always be trying to learn new things, and because people change, clients change, ideas change. So always be listening.
I think we're all guilty of it. Well, maybe not Chris, but
Marriage?
most of us,
I listen a lot.
Yeah.
especially to his wife.
Were you listening just now when I?
What? Were you talking
Sorry.
Wait, is it my turn?
What?
No, I think, the other thing too, with listening more and talking less is that it does allow you to pick up on that, like the subtlety and nuance. I've found that at working with people that often they won't come out and tell you something that's very important, but it'll come out in very subtle ways, and if you miss that, you miss it completely.
Reading between the
the
lines.
project. Yeah, it's reading between the lines and
Well, but also having the opportunity. I mean, if you're actively listening, when they say something that requires more inquiry, or there's something there that's going on, you have the awareness to go, oh, I need to know more about that.
yeah.
If you're talking a lot, those are things you're going to miss. And also, when you're talking a lot, you're putting your client. They're kind of in a listening mode. They're not conveying information. They're not communicating because you're talking.
Yeah.
So you miss those opportunities to let your client say their words, give their perspective, but also shed some light on some of these subtle things that you're talking about that really you need to be talking about. You need to find out more about it. And the only way you're going to find out about those things is if you're a good listener.
I also think it can impact the project downstream, not just in the way of what you pick up, but how your client perceives working with you. And so imagine the analogy of being at a restaurant and you're telling the waiter very specifically, I can't have this in my food. I'm allergic to it. And they don't really seem to be listening. They're spouting off about the specials. They're talking about the beer menu. And they walk away from the table and you go, God, I really want to make sure that they heard that. So when they come back, what are they going to do? You're going to say, did you hear the thing about no meat? I wanted to make sure you heard that, right? So now to flip that over to film and what we do with our clients, you now are in a situation where if your client's not confident that you really get it because you really weren't listening, or maybe you didn't ask some of those questions, they may be a little more hands-on. They may be a little more quick to, double check on things or want to see a progress update. And let's face it, I mean, as creatives, we love a client who does trust us and gives us that power and says, show it to me when you feel ready about it,
Yeah.
But you may end up with a client who's not that way if you're not or practicing active listening, right?
Yeah. Good point.
Randy. You were listening.
I
It's
was
good.
listening. I
It's
didn't
good.
want
I
to
like
interrupt. But all the more reason to bring in a notepad and practice taking notes, because I think we're all listening to a client, and all of a sudden we get this great idea, and we don't want to forget that idea, and we interrupt people because we got to spout it out.
Yeah.
If you start taking notes so you don't interrupt that person, and to make sure that you don't forget that idea, this great idea that you just came up with, jotting down notes in shorthand can really help.
That's a really good tip. I actually hadn't even considered the strategy or what happens in your mind when, as a creative, our minds are going a million miles a minute. And to your point, you have these ideas in the middle. It's a good, we bring notepads and stuff, but you don't think about that actual instance. So yeah, that's
that
really.
happens to me.
Oh, I try really
the
hard.
time.
I'll think of something, and then you don't want to interrupt somebody, and then
Oh, you forget it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I can't even remember what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
Were you not listening when we started? Oh, Matt.
And here I thought it was age related, Thank God it's not. Of course, we do live in Colorado, so that could have something to do
That
with
has
it.
nothing to do
So,
with
Randy, you take notes. Does anyone else do anything to, remembering what people say, documenting what, clients
sometimes I'll
want?
just hit the recorder on my cell phone.
Yeah.
I've done that,
it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Taking notes, jot them down, the highlights, the bullet points. And I try and keep notes fairly short, but I also do have a tendency to, in the moment, I'll write one word down, and then I'll look back at it later and go, what was I trying to tell myself,
But I still think old school is better than digital voice recorder, and then you got to deal with it later and add one more thing to the list.
Yeah, there's a perception about having a screen in front of you versus a notepad
more
that
personal.
indicates your level of attentiveness. In our team meetings at work, we went from everybody having their laptops open, so you could only see from the nose up, to saying, let's make this a screen-free
No
meeting.
devices.
And no devices.
Couldn't
and-
agree more.
And,
Yeah.
and
Changes.
even though you're still looking down and you're writing a note, there is, I think it's a perception thing that with a screen up, you're being less attentive. Yeah. And there's more opportunities for distraction.
Oh, for sure.
absolutely.
Especially during the
Somebody's
day.
got Facebook open or whatever.
Yeah,
An email
just
comes in and
emails
you check it.
And we're all.
You've got a wasp that's very much interested in
Is that an actual wasp?
It's some sort of
Wow, man. So we do have a bee for all of you
foul
listening.
insect.
There's
And Sean's
insects.
deathly afraid of insects and the like.
I've gotten better since I became a dad. My son, this anecdote, not film related, but still good content, right? My son he's 2 years old. He went to the dollar store and found this giant fake black plastic spider.
Fantastic.
And what 2-year-olds do is they leave things in random places. So you can imagine what the last few months at my house have been like. You step out of the bathroom and you see a giant black spider in the middle of the floor. But I think what that's done is got me used to seeing big black insects around, so I'm not quite as scared. Getting better. Getting a little better. My wife had to kill a wasp today in the house, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Poor wasp.
Well, they don't make honey, and they just sting you and bite you, so.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let's talk about the coolest shit that we've seen. Mine, pretty simple. If you've updated to iOS 12, there's the new measuring app. Has anybody tried it yet?
It's so
It's
cool.
pretty cool.
I haven't
It uses
updated.
the camera, and you basically pick a couple of fixed points, and it will tell you the measurement of those on your camera. So if I wanted to say, how wide is this table that we're sitting at, my iPhone would be able to tell me exactly how wide the dimensions of this.
For
using
how
the-
far?
Using the camera. I don't know. I haven't tested it to, could you measure the size of a building? I think it's meant for,
So
kind of
it's
smaller
an
objects.
app that
It's an
is-
app, and it's
yeah,
built into
it's called
iOS,
Measure,
and it's called Measure.
I
yeah.
haven't
Augmented
6
reality.
by 6 elk,
It's what?
approximately
It's augmented reality.
325 yards away.
Yeah, I actually was so curious about this measurement app to see how accurate it was that I took one of our coworkers, we call him Weeby. He's got a bunch of rulers. One's 24 inches long. So I stuck this thing on the desk and I busted out the measurement app and I said, I wonder if it'll be like 23 something, 25 something. Smack on the nose.
It was exactly right.
24 inches.
Does it
To
have
the ruler.
24 on the ruler, though?
Well, it does, but it's funny because the app isn't, it's based, like, if I had stopped it in the middle of the ruler at 12, or kept going, right? Because you can set those points, but...
Think about it.
the
It knows
other-
focal length. So the camera knows how far away something is because it knows
Yes.
where it's focused.
Yes.
And so then it's just a matter
Triangular
of...
measurement.
Math
or
Yeah.
something.
Rangefinder.
It knows the distance
Yeah.
and the angle.
It's actually kind of simple,
And
Yeah.
but still really cool.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
really cool because what you can do is because you're using the camera, you could go completely off that thing that you were measuring and then come back to it and it still sees that area. It recognizes that this is the area you just measured. So you can actually have multiple measurements around the room. Be like, okay, that window's this many inches and this thing is this many inches. And
Yeah.
literally now that augmented reality of the view of your room, man, I think that's so cool.
Who needs to learn trig anymore?
Exactly. Yeah.
Next podcast topic is technology making us smarter or dumber? Yeah, man.
So, Sean, any cool shit you've seen?
Yeah,
lately?
I mean, in that's a good one. I know we were talking about that today. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've been using, and I'll go back towards film and media, and this is probably old news to everybody watching and listening. But multicam editing in Premiere. The first time I saw that was in someone else's project. We had hired a freelancer to do some work for us. We shot interviews with 2 cameras. My view of the world was always you just find a point and sync them up and you edit from there.
Yeah.
And you chop and you slice and I went into this guy's timeline and saw this MC 1 and 2 thing going on. I'm like, what is this? And I looked into it and man, it just, and so, the technology itself, like I said, is old. It's not new, but I've just found more and more uses for even just being able to sync that kind of stuff. So for example, when we record the podcast, running our we have 2 different recorders that are recording 2 different sets of microphones since there are 4 of us. And in Audition, which is the audio editing, program in Adobe, it doesn't have a simple synchronize setting. It has a automatic speech alignment. And the difference being is that for us, we don't want it to stretch. I mean, this is real time. These recordings should match, right? We're not taking recording A and recording B and trying to fake that they match.
Mm-hmm.
They're using it for things like ADR, right?
Yeah, so if I said the same thing Sean just said, they're using it for, I don't even remember, I wasn't actively listening to what he was saying, but if Sean said something and I said the exact same thing, I could match my voice to Sean's tempo, so I could make, so for video purposes, I could use my voice, but it would look like Sean talking kind of thing. That's what it's intended for.
And what it does though inherently is it stretches time a little bit to make that fit, whereas it will not just simply take 2 clips and find the points where they match and line them up. It will always try and stretch the 2 clips to fit. And we found this out. We did a test today where we recorded the same voice memo. We both hit record, one on Matt's phone, one on my phone. And so they essentially were the exact same recording, right?
Mm-hmm.
One maybe started a few seconds different, but they should have the same tracks. Maybe one with Matt louder, one with me louder. But when we got in there, it tried to stretch to fit my shorter clip to his longer
It was
clip.
weird.
And it was
And
very
did the voice
strange.
really change? I would think it.
Well, what it does, it didn't change pitch, and that's important too, right?
Yeah.
It's going to maintain pitch but stretch the rate. So
Right.
if I said, Old MacDonald had a farm, and that was too short, it would have me in the same tone going, Old MacDonald had a farm. It would try and stretch one of those syllables,
That's wild.
and it was very strange, and it wasn't what we needed.
Right.
Well, cue Premiere,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I could take those 2 audio clips, no video,
Yeah.
and just select them both, hit synchronize, and boom, it worked. It aligned them, and it didn't have that stretch problem. So just, I guess a cool way or a cool topic to bring up is that you can use these things in multiple ways.
Yeah.
Don't be pigeonholed by this is audio, and this is a video program.
Right.
Sometimes
Well-
the best solution for your audio is in your video program.
Absolutely.
So it would sync up. So you would say, "Oh, McDonald had a farm," and you would say it at different speeds, and it would sync those two up.
You pick the
Because-
master and the
'cause that's
slave,
not
if you
how-
will, and it'll
Sync
make
it
them
up.
match
Yeah.
up.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for ADR, I think.
Right. So imagine you're trying to perform or reperform your line, and you set it just a tad slower,
Yeah.
but the video is faster. It's
Right.
going to compress or stretch your new audio to match what was originally cued in the video. So
Yeah.
your lips are still moving. It's going to say, I got to make it fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. We'll look at it sometime. It's kind of
Yeah.
cool,
Yeah. I'll have to
but
try
not
it.
exactly what we were going for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does ADR stand for anyways?
Automatic dialogue replacement.
Yep.
Although there's really
Thanks, old
nothing
guy.
automatic about it, is there? It's a very manual process.
Yeah.
Is that what it stands for? Maybe.
Yeah.
Automated
Automated,
dialogue
I think.
replacement.
Yeah.
Not automatic. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I
And
wish
Nothing's
it was
automatic in
automatic.
this world.
Yeah, and the way that at least it used to work is you would have like a loop. It would basically continually record over and over and over again, and
Yeah.
people would say the dialogue and say the dialogue and say the dialogue until it got, everything
timing
was
down.
kind of perfect. But
And imagine doing that for a 2-hour movie.
right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Hopefully not too much of that.
Yeah,
Needs
yeah.
to be replaced.
Right.
Yeah. Chris and Randy, what's some cool shit you guys have seen?
One thing that's come out on a software level that I have not physically got my hands on yet, but I'm looking to. I'm kind of excited to check it out. Is I like color grading a lot, and a fellow by the name of Denver Riddle of Color Grading
Yeah.
Central came
Yeah.
out with something called Cinema Grade, and I'm excited to take that for a spin. And it's kind of a new take on color grading and a little more a visual approach. Some automation built in, and looking to check that out. And you can use that within as a plugin for your favorite video editing.
Premiere.
Premiere, Final
PC.
Cut, and also my favorite, DaVinci Resolve. But I think I was reading it's a light version, so it's a little bit different on Resolve. So I don't know for sure how deep it goes. But you're basically going in, clicking on a spot visually in the image, and adjusting exposure, color, versus just using color wheels as an example.
That's cool.
Or curves.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
They're taking it more visually versus technical and scopes.
Mm-hmm.
But people wanted their scope still, so they just added scopes. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
which I agree. So I'm
Yeah.
looking to test it out.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well,
Report
when will you be
back.
done testing that?
Yeah.
When will you be done?
The
It's
end
gonna
of
be a
second
running
quarter.
joke.
End of second quarter. Okay.
This is gonna
Chris,
be a long
any cool shit
running
you've seen
joke.
lately?
Yeah, Phantom 5. I saw some early photos of the device. It's a little sleeker, so it has a kind of a visual thing. I think they do that just for aesthetics, just to go, see, it's the new model.
It's new.
It goes faster because it looks sleeker,
right.
But it has a very much beefed up camera, bigger lens, so they're trying to go a little bit towards that Inspire side.
Interchangeable lenses, or
No, I don't think
Okay.
it is.
Zoom lens?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was one of the big speculations on the Phantom, is that they'd allow you to be able to switch out the lenses, maybe.
Yeah, it could be.
That could
but
be
they
kinda
don't want to
cool.
undercut the Inspire, so who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Inspire still has a bigger camera, more robust, but, so anyway, so looking for more info on that, coming down the pike, so anxious to see what that's gonna develop into.
Yeah.
If anybody has any experience or comments with the Phantom 5,
Yeah.
post below your comments. We'll talk about you on our next podcast.
Cool.
Right?
This
Yeah.
is non-techy,
Get-
but when
get
it comes to
involved.
drones and aerials, what is your favorite shot, your favorite view? Is it oblique? Does it have the horizon in it? Do you have one?
Yeah, I've got a couple. One that I think is pretty simple is a circular kind of point of interest shot, so that you
Right.
you circle around something,
The orbit shot.
The orbit shot.
That's what it
I like
is,
that.
You orbit them.
And then the other one I like is where on the Phantom, you can set it to go a certain, and on the Mavic, you can set it to go a certain way, and then your camera's free to do whatever you want to do.
Mm.
So, because the craft is always going to go this way, back and
It's like
forth.
on a
and then
cable cam, kind of.
yeah, and then you can do whatever you want. So those are a couple shots that I think are cinematic and interesting looking, other than just risers or going past something, stuff like
I
that.
think everybody has their favorites.
Well, it's funny. You actually got a really cool shot that you ended up using in the CW project. And it's just a very simple, the drone was pointed, we were filming a field, and there was a tractor in the field. And the shot, it was flying away from the tractor, if I remember correctly. And so it's kind of pulling back to reveal more and more, but the camera started pointed down at the field and then slowly rose
Rotated.
up to give you more of that horizontal plane of view, right? So you weren't
It was
looking down, you were now
It was a
looking across.
compound move.
It was great.
It was brilliant.
It was very cinematic because it revealed the
this,
tractor
Matt?
well, and it revealed the tractor well, and kudos to Matt for being patient to wait for this thing to get into the spot, and then do the move and pull it off, and even more kudos to you, Randy, for out of all that footage picking that one to get in there. But just a great example of like using that drone and getting it, not just flying it over a field or rising it up and down, but using two different movements, the moving away from the subject to open up that point of view, and then to change the perspective of the camera at the same time. Really neat.
To help,
Yeah.
all to service the story.
All to service the story, and it did.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, I think for me, it's getting to that point with the drone where you just feel it in the controllers. You're not
Right.
thinking about, okay, I need to go up, and you've just got to have it that. In
It really
your
helps
hands.
when you were a gamer as a child, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
right. Yeah,
That's where I suffer.
Absolutely. My
too.
favorite shot with the drone is to shoot in 4K and then do where you're either pulling out or you're pushing in.
Yeah.
And you combine that with in post pulling out or pushing in.
yes.
So you get that
Hitchcock.
dolly move.
Yeah.
Love that, especially with like mountains, and you've got stacked mountains and you
Yeah, those
compress
are
that space.
Spacey looking shots.
And so that's what the new the Mavic Pro 2 with the zoom lens, whatever the hell they're calling that one, you'll be able to do that effect theoretically in camera, because you'll be able to push in and be zooming out or in, vice versa.
Wow.
With the
Yeah.
drone.
It'll be interesting to see if they'll let you kind of like on a slider program that in. So say, here are my 2 points I want the drone to fly between, and
Yeah.
then as it moves from point A to point B, go from this focal range to this focal range, and
I
then
don't
that
see
way you
why
don't
not.
have to touch it.
Yeah.
You just say, okay, play, and it resets and does it again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you say, no, that wasn't just too fast or too slow. You could adjust those things, but to not actually have to manually adjust that as you're flying the drone,
Yeah.
that would really, because then you can design shots.
Yes.
Try them. Nope. Okay, let's tweak some settings. Let the drone do the work. You're not actually having to manipulate it.
Which
You're
also
just dialing it in.
Yeah.
Brings up your other comment of having the patience to go through all of the footage. And
That's a whole nother episode, isn't
that
it?
is a whole nother episode.
Absolutely.
Because that is not always easy to do because you just want to.
Yeah, that'll work. Let's
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
In the next episode, we're going to get into some kind of automation stuff with sliders and gimbals and drones and that kind of stuff, so we can expand on that topic
Yeah, great.
a little bit more. Let's talk coffee real quick.
Well, I guess as usual, this is my portion. No, I thought of a cool topic to talk about with coffee. So I think we've gone around. We'll do this again just for the sake of the topic. But how many cups of coffee a day, on average, would you drink, Chris? If you drank coffee.
No, I probably drink maybe 2 or 3 cups a week.
Okay, Randy.
I have cut back to. I used to do drip coffee, and I used to probably drink a pot a day.
Okay.
And now that I have my fancy new little machine and I kind of make Americanos, I am down to 2 cups a day.
Okay, and Matt. And I'm going somewhere with this. so.
It depends. I do drink coffee every single day, and I would say on a light day I'll have maybe and cups is such a relative thing. Like, what is a cup of coffee?
It's like how many alcoholic drinks? Well, I'm not taking 4 shots, but I might have 4
How many beers did you have? Well, I only had 1 beer. It was 24 ounces, but I only had 1 beer. That doesn't quite count. So I would say I probably drink about 20 ounces of coffee a day on the low end till I can blow through my 10-cup coffee pot, which I don't know, that's maybe 30 ounces or something a day.
Wow.
And so,
Yeah, I could do that
On the
too.
weekends.
yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to drink more in the winter, not to interrupt.
Well, that
Sorry.
makes
Yeah,
perfect
yeah.
sense. A warm drink, cold day.
Yeah,
It's
so
that
do I.
comfort. So the reason I bring that up is because I recently came across a post. There's a very well-known barista on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook from Germany called Dritan Alcela, and he's a great latte artist. He's got Latte University and stuff, and he put a post out there as a poll on Facebook to say, all right, baristas of the world, people who are around coffee all the time and have access to the greatest coffee-making tools and the best coffee, how much coffee do you guys drink a day? And I thought this was such a great question because I'm like, it'd be like, well, as a photographer, do you shoot your own family pictures? Or like, hey, if you're a hairdresser, who cuts your hair? It's the same sort of deal in a way. So I looked at this and I was kind of scared because I'm like, oh man, like caffeine is not great for you, in large amounts. Coffee's not great for your teeth. And there's all these things. So you're like, oh my God, am I drinking too much coffee? Well, it turns out, 2 to 3 cups a day, even espressos, an espresso or a latte, that's actually kind of average. And even baristas who are around coffee all day, that's about what the average answer was 2 to 3 maybe.
Yeah.
And 3 espressos may sound like a lot, but spaced out. You have one at 7 a.m. before you leave for the day. You maybe have one, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then another one at 8 o'clock, when you're winding down for the day and you have your cup of coffee while you're watching your show or whatever. It really doesn't, you're not jittery all day. You're not freaking out all day. So I was kind of surprised to see, but happy to see that, even people who are around coffee all the time, it's not like, oh, well, I drink 6 cups a day. Or that they weren't like, well, as a barista who's been drinking coffee my whole life, it's really important that I'm not drinking that much coffee because it's killing me. So only 1 a month. That was kind of nice too. So that's the topic of coffee for today is even baristas and people who are really into coffee. They drink a normal amount.
The health profession
That's
keeps
right.
changing, what's good and bad as well. So.
Right. Coffee used to be, hey, a cup of coffee a day is going to have you live to 110. And
That's the last I heard. So have they reverted back to?
No, that's the latest.
I think the biggest thing, is like, for me, because I really started drinking a couple lattes every day, there were a couple things I did to make sure that wasn't going to completely destroy me. One of them was like, if I eat cereal now, instead of putting additional dairy milk in my cereal, switch that to almond milk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't like to just drink straight almond milk, but in cereal or something, there's not that big of a difference. So now I've cut down all my dairy because I'm adding the dairy in with my lattes. And the other thing, too, is just reducing my cup size. A 12-ounce drink is a lot. Even if it's, coconut milk or almond milk or whatever, it's a lot of liquid.
Yeah.
So I cut that down to 8 ounces. So there are things like that I would do to make sure that my coffee habit wasn't going to completely,
Balance it
be
with
that
water.
detrimental to my health. So.
Well, I still get a hell of a buzz. Just on a cup of coffee, I'm just like, whoa. I can feel it, very distinctly. So, it does have its benefits for not being a daily drinker.
Yeah.
Matt, we drink too much coffee.
I don't think you can drink too much coffee. And my
Blasphemy.
opinion on the barista thing, and it's good to hear that they're averaging 2 to 3 cups a day. It's kind of like never trust a skinny chef. I don't think I would trust a barista that doesn't drink at least 2 to 3 a day.
Yeah. Don't trust the skinny chef. I like that. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Now let's talk geeky tech shit. So Sean just recently got a new fancy MacBook Pro. Actually, 2 of them. How did you end up with 2 brand new top-of-the-line MacBook Pros?
I stole them. No. They
And-
fell off the back of a truck.
And then just yesterday, or 2 days ago, Microsoft released the new Surface Pro 6 and the new Surface Studio. So let's talk geeky tech shit in the light of platforms, Mac and Windows. And first, let's hear Sean's story of how he ended up with 2 brand new top-of-the-line MacBook Pros.
I'll keep this short since I just owned the last segment. I bought a iMac, 27-inch iMac in 2009 for myself, and I used that for almost 10 years. And then very recently, it wouldn't boot. And I went to Matt, who knows a lot about computers, and my buddy Ethan, who works in IT. and we did everything we could to try and bring this thing back from the dead. We got it up just long enough for me to back up all of my data to the cloud, and then it never booted again. So I made the decision after some research to keep it with Mac, just because I have an iPhone and iTunes and all the things that kind of connect that. Made sense to keep with Mac. And then again, I also realized that because I do so much creative work that I wanted to make sure that this computer was going to last me possibly another 10 years like my last one did, right? These are not cheap purchases, they're investments. So I bit the bullet and I bought the new i9 quad core, I think is what it is.
6-core.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, right.
Isn't it
6-core i9 MacBook Pro. And I mean, it's beautiful. I love the space gray look. I love the giant trackpad. The touch bar is a bit of a gimmick for me just because it's another thing that could break. And all they really did was replace physical buttons with a non-physical thing. So unless you're going to represent something that could not be represented physically, I think that was just kind of a gimmick, but it is a beautiful machine. I haven't really gotten a chance to put it through its real paces yet. That's something we're going to try when I get my new work computer up and running. So that's my personal Mac, and then because I handle all of the video editing and video production for our group at our company, they replaced my 2015 MacBook Pro with the new MacBook Pro. So that's why I have two. I have one for work and one at home. And the one for work, we're going to do a speed test on when we get it fully up and running, everything installed on it, render a 4K timeline on it, and the same 4K timeline on my old one, and clock the difference in speed.
Now, why did you go, especially at work, with that versus an iMac?
Well, with the iMac, because it's not portable, would be the biggest thing. So I work a lot when I travel, in hotel rooms, things like that, work a lot from home. And so having the portability of the laptop, and ultimately that kind of swayed my decision at home too. It's nice to know that you can take it with you if you need to. If you're going to do a tethered photo shoot and you want to have that computer there, so much easier to bring a laptop. And this actually leads me to something else. We touched on this back when it was like, what can I go back and tell myself? I used to think that getting the biggest possible screen was the best thing, and now having traveled so much, I would go smaller, and that's going to be for maybe one of our next episodes.
Because you can always plug it into a monitor.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, portability and transportability.
But they keeps up with 4K and
and that's the thing, right? I mean, so with the new i9 6-core processor, it's really supposed to be almost like 60% faster than the last one in render time and playback, and they advertise up to 4K video streams. Now, granted, that's on Final Cut Pro. And listeners, please chime in. If you've used both Final Cut Pro and Premiere and you have a preference, chime in and tell us why. Comment, because this is something Matt and I have been hearing a lot about recently, is that with these newer, faster computers, you can render a 4K timeline 60% faster, but you could render it like 80% faster if you go on Final Cut versus Premiere. So we've been hearing a lot of things about how if you're on a Mac, Final Cut Pro is so much faster than Premiere. We've yet to see that ourselves, but we've heard a lot about it. So interesting, very interesting.
Solid state media, or you're using RAIDs. I mean, that all factors in.
It sure does. Yeah, it really does. And actually, on that same point, I recently made the switch from having all my memory in my computer, which, if you guys know, buying Apple computers is incredibly expensive. You can get the same amount of storage, 6 times the amount of storage for the same price by getting an external drive. And since that's basically how we work at our office anyway, everything's either synced, to a Dropbox, or you're keeping it on a RAID or a hard drive. You're never actually storing that media on your machine, especially in video. I made that fundamental switch. I used to have a 2 terabyte hard drive on my iMac, and it basically stored every single project, every photo shoot I did for, the past 10 years on that machine. And now with my new computer, I store almost nothing locally on the machine. I store it all to an external hard drive and just use the machine to drive.
Runs smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be a lot safer too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much more redundant. So.
Yeah.
So Mac versus PC.
Yeah, Chris, you're on PC.
He said
Yeah,
it.
well, I don't have your, Ferrari to play with and test.
But why do you like PC?
It's like we moved off Mac because we were no longer using Final Cut Pro. When they totally dumbed it down and changed it radically, we jumped on to, that's when we kind of transferred over to the PC system.
Yeah.
Because there was no reason to. And at that point, quite frankly, I was kind of ticked off at Apple. I'd been through their hardware changes, a couple of those cycles where, but we're no longer supporting this, got to get rid of all of it, So as a business owner, these are just like expenses that come up and, unexpected, and oftentimes there's no avenue other than just limping along as long as you can before you change over. But yeah, we changed over to PCs a few years ago, and everything has worked great. We really haven't had any issues where we would look back and go, gosh, I wish, with our Apple we could do this, and we can't do that now. I'm sure those things do exist, but they didn't really have a big impact on us, moving over to a different platform. Of course, the cost and everything is so much lesser on a PC, but definitely there are some distinct advantages with Apple. They've got a very closed system computer that they, have specialized with hardware and software and everything on there, where it's a brave new world with PC because you have to have that compatibility to reach across so many devices and pieces of software, and software that is compatible with older versions. And so your PC, definitely you mentioned, well, I never have a driver issue come up.
Yeah.
Well, I do. And these are some of the things that go with that territory that you just, that's part of the picture. So you just got to deal with it.
But there's no cost associated with updating a driver usually, right?
Time.
So there's the trade-off, right? It's like, Chris, for you, these things that, they may be a little bit of a time suck or a bit of an inconvenience, but in the long run, they're really saving you financially from having to continue to update all of these computers with new machines. You're able to live on your PCs for so much longer, or if you did have to upgrade, build a much more powerful machine at a much lower cost point.
I don't believe that holds true. I would actually be willing to bet
hardware
in the professional space that the lifespan of a professional level Mac versus a professional level PC is about the same. PCs, if you build your own, you could potentially swap out components. But if you go to faster processor, faster RAM, you're going to need a faster motherboard, a bigger power supply. I guess you get to keep the box, but that's a pretty inconsequential piece of the equation.
As the purchasing manager of a small company, I would say, when
you don't have a guy for that?
Yeah, that and more. Twizzle sticks as well. Looking at, because we did price it, we did look at it, and it was the donut workstation, or whatever that they had there, and so we looked at that, and that was like $5,000 or $4,000 or something, and I think are they using like they're not using iChips in those?
No, those were Xeon
chips, right? But looking at performance of not using Xeon but a similar CPU, we could get into it for a fraction, much lower cost.
Yeah.
What about being a lifelong Mac user and never, ever using a PC? What about jumping in and learning a new operating system? Is that a big deal? Or?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's a very big deal.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I used a PC all while I was growing up, right? So in my childhood, we had a computer in the house probably from the time I was maybe 12 or 13. I remember our first like Packard Bell with like the horizontal base and then the screen that sat on top and hard drive and a floppy disk drive and all that. And so everything I did as a kid was on Windows, and I got familiar with the start button and my computer and all that stuff. Switching to a Mac took a little getting used to, but it didn't like completely mess my world up. But recently I've had the opportunity to then get on someone's like new Windows machine and how their operating system is now, and I'm like, how do you live like this? Like it totally threw me for a loop.
That's how I would be.
It's almost like to jump from PC to Mac, you probably get by pretty good. If you've been on Mac forever and then jump to a PC, there's going to be a bit of a curve, I would say.
Yeah, there's some subtleties to it. I mean, there's some nice really nice things in Windows that I like. Windows 10. You put a gun to my head and make me choose, I'm going to choose a Mac 10 times out of 10. But I mean, specifically on the Surface device, I mean, right now I carry a MacBook Pro and an iPad Pro with me wherever I go. And the idea that I could just carry one device with the Surface Pro, I like that. I haven't jumped yet. Actually, I have a Surface Pro, MacBook Pro, and an iPad Pro. So I think I'm taking a step in the wrong direction.
Do you carry all three of those wherever you go?
No.
Why do you need the iPad along with your MacBook Pro?
Because I like to sketch.
Okay.
I also like the portability of it. I like how fast it is. What I would really like to get to is where an iPad Pro can replace me carrying around my MacBook Pro, and a lot of times, to be honest, it does. And maybe in a future episode we can talk a little bit about mobile and using things like LumaFusion and Lightroom and stuff on an iPad for video and photo editing.
And in that same discussion, talking about what does that computer of the future look like? Because there are some things I thought Apple would do that they didn't do. So we'll get into that. Oh, is that it right there?
Your phone is much more, technologically advanced than this old thing. But I mean, wouldn't you agree? This is where it's all heading.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably in your pocket to a large degree. Yeah.
I mean, because they've grown the size of these screens now. I mean, and even the Samsung device is,
But
bigger.
you wouldn't want to edit a full program
No.
on that thing. So
But
for guys like us, it would never fully replace, but the capability to do certain things. I think that's where the discussion
I wonder if it's going to be
opens
voice
up.
driven though. You're going to go, cut here, do this, do
God.
that. So it's all voice. And
That would take a little bit of the fun out of
it'll
it for
link up
me.
to your brain, and it'll just read your brain as well.
I already
Yeah,
have
you could just
I already
think
have the
about the
fonts
piece and
on
then
my
it-
phone as large as they'll go, just so I
I
can
noticed
read them.
I noticed that.
Coming
You don't
from
wear
an old guy.
contacts or anything?
No.
Oh, wow.
And I had LASIK, but they told me.
Bifocals.
All right, gentlemen, I think that we have contributed all we can to this podcast.
Yeah.
As always, it's a pleasure to sit down with you all,
Same.
talk about our craft, and drink some coffee. For those of you brave enough to listen to this podcast, please make sure you've subscribed on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with your friends and colleagues, and go out and make something. On the next episode, we're going to talk about travel.